Hey, what's up guys? This is the video for section 4.4, which is parallel and perpendicular lines. So let's go ahead and review what are parallel lines, what are perpendicular lines, and what you need to know about the slopes in order to write a parallel or perpendicular lines. So first, parallel. Parallel lines are lines that never intersect, they don't touch, so they are side by side. They can be going up, they can be going down, they can be horizontal, they can be vertical, but the two lines can never touch, can never intersect each other. And you guys can have 3 parallel lines, 4 parallel lines, but in this section we're just going to look at 2 parallel lines. What do we know about parallel lines? Well, parallel lines have the same slope. So if we know the slope of the first line, the second line will have the same slope. M sub 1, which is the slope of line 1, equals M sub 2, which is the slope of second line or line 2. Okay. Now perpendicular. Perpendicular is kind of like the opposite of parallel lines. Perpendicular are lines that do intersect, they do cross each other, and you guys can see here I have 2 lines intersecting at this point. But there's something you have to check every time you want to know if they're perpendicular. If the lines, when they cross, they make a 90-degree angle right here, this box means the angle is 90 degrees, we can say it's perpendicular. In geometry, they use the term right angle, but it is a 90-degree angle. So when the 2 lines intersect and we have a 90-degree angle, they are perpendicular. Now you don't have to worry about the degrees here because it's not about the geometry part, but we are going to work with the algebra part. Now what do we know about the 2 perpendicular lines? If you guys multiply the 2 slopes, so let's say this is line number 1, we know the slope of this one, we know the slope of this one, and if you multiply and if you get the product to equal -1, they are perpendicular. So another way you can say it is that the perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slope. Opposite reciprocal. Let me give you guys an example of an opposite reciprocal. If you guys have a fraction, 3/4, that's a fraction. The opposite of a positive 3/4 is a negative, and the reciprocal is when you switch the numbers, the bottom goes to the top and the top goes to the bottom. So the reciprocal is 4/3. So this fraction is the opposite, positive to a negative, and reciprocal. The 3 went to the bottom and the 4 went to the top. If you guys multiply these 2 right here, I'm just going to put up times in the middle. If they're perpendicular, it has to equal to -1. The product has to equal to -1. And I'm going to show you guys. When you multiply, you're going to multiply fractions. When you multiply fractions, you multiply straight across. So the top will be a -12. On the bottom will be a 12. And -12 divided by 12 is -1. So we have perpendicular lines. So the 2 lines have the opposite reciprocal slopes. All right, to write a parallel line, and I'm just reading here on the 3rd bullet, to write a parallel or perpendicular line, start with the point slope form, and then if they ask you guys to write it in a different form, you just change it. From point slope, you can change it to standard, or you can change it to slope instead form. So let's go ahead and do some examples. I'm going to show you guys how to find parallel lines and perpendicular lines. So let's try example number 1. So we have example 1 here. We want to determine whether the graphs of each line are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So we just want to know, if you guys graph, we're not going to graph them, but if you guys graph those 2 lines, are they going to intersect and be perpendicular, or will not intersect and will be parallel? So first of all, we need to find the slope of the lines. We know that if the slopes are equal, they will be parallel. But if the slopes are opposite reciprocal of each other, then they will be perpendicular. If they're not the same, the slopes are not opposite reciprocal, then we say neither because they're not parallel or perpendicular. So let's go ahead and look at what form we have. We have 3x minus 4y equals -2. All right. This is the standard form because the x and the y are on the same side. The bottom, 4x plus 3y equals 30, is also in standard form. I'm going to show you guys kind of like a shortcut how to find the slope in standard form. There's a couple ways you guys can find the slope. The one I'm not going to do, but I'm going to tell you guys right now what you can do. You can get the y by itself, meaning you change this to slope in as a form. And once you get the y by itself, you guys just look for the m, the slope, next to the x. But like I said, I'm not going to do that method. What I'm going to show you is how to find the slope when you have standard form. So my slope, standard. Now remember, this is when you have standard form. If you have a different form, it's not going to work. But we are going to take opposite of the a value divided by b. So this is where you have to know which one is the a, the b, and the c in standard form. A is the one with the x, b is the one with the y, and the number with no variable is your constant. But we don't need c to find the slope. We just need a and b. So let's go ahead and make sense of the fraction here. So I'm going to put equal sign here. So let's see, opposite, the negative a means opposite of a. So opposite of this a, positive opposite is negative 3 over, and let's look at b. B is not the opposite, b stays the same. Whatever sign you guys have, that's the one you use. We have a -4, so that's a -4. -4. If you have a +4, it's going to be a +4. But right now, they are negative. When you have fractions, two negatives, a negative divided by negative turns to positive. So this fraction actually equals +3 over 4. All right, so we found the first slope. My slope is 3 over 4, and I'm just going to write it here, m sub 1, so the first line has a slope of 3 over 4. Let's find the second one. The second one, I'm just going to go down here. Same thing, I'm going to use opposite of a divided by b. So I'm going to look for the a value. A is the one with the x, so opposite is negative. So -4 over b. Let's see, b is positive. So I'm going to keep it as positive, -4 over 3. I do have one fraction, but the bottom is not a fraction. I do have one negative, but the bottom is not negative. So the fraction stays the same. The fraction is my slope, -4 over 3. So let's go ahead and just compare the two. So I'm just going to write here m sub 2 equals -4 over 3. That's my second slope. So my first slope is 3 over 4, and my second slope is -4 over 3. You guys see? This one is opposite reciprocal of this one. One's positive, one's negative. The 4 went to the top, the 3 went to the bottom. Opposite reciprocal. So that means, guys, that this right here, the two lines are perpendicular. So I'm just going to write that down. The two lines are perpendicular. If the two slopes are equal, same number, then will be parallel. But right now they are perpendicular. I'm going to put here, when you multiply the two fractions, it's going to equal a -1. And you guys can check. You don't have to check every time, as long as you understand you do have the opposite reciprocal of that fraction, you guys are good. You just can say it's the two lines are perpendicular. Okay, so now let's go ahead and practice how to write. So I'm just going to read the instructions, how to write an equation in slope-intercept form of the line that passes through the given point and is parallel. Let me highlight that. We want parallel to the given line. Okay, so first, let's understand the problem. We want to write, not graph, not solve, but we want to write an equation in slope-intercept form. What is a slope-intercept form? Let me just zoom in here so you guys can know what I'm talking about. The slope-intercept form is when y is by itself. Y equals mx plus b. So the answer we're looking for, the line, the equation that we're looking for, we must have the y by itself. Okay, let's go ahead and look at the first example. The point that is given to us is -4 over 2. the line that is given to us is y equals negative 1/2 x plus 6. This one here is already given, so that's not my answer. I'm looking for a second equation, second line, that it's parallel to this one. So what do we know about parallel lines? We know that parallel lines have the same slope. So m1 equals m2. So my slope for this line that is given is right here. So m1 equals negative 1/2. So I can say my slope of the line that I'm looking for is the same slope. So negative 1/2. All right, so that's a good start. Now, what do we need to use? Let's go ahead and use the point slope. I know it says up there the answer has to be in slope intercept form, but point slope is going to help you to set up the equation, and then you can change it to slope intercept form. So here is my point slope form. I'm going to look for the x1 and the y1. That's where the point comes in. x1, y1, x and y. I'm going to substitute the numbers. Look what I know. I know what's the x1, I know what's the slope, and I know what is the x1. This is y1. I said x1, but it's y1, my slope, and x1. Also keep in mind, guys, that when you substitute the numbers from a point to the formula, this one, you change the sign, change the sign over here, and you change the sign here. So I'm just going to change the sign. Y and y1 will be minus 2 equals negative 1/2 times the quantity of x, and the negative 4 becomes positive. You do the opposite. You change the sign, plus 4. And I'll tell you guys why you change the sign. For the x1, there's a negative 4. The formula has a negative. A negative times a negative is a positive. And same thing with the y. The y here is positive, but the formula has a minus, a negative. Positive times a negative, it's a negative. Okay? Now you guys need to change it to slope intercept form. You need to get y by itself. So I'm going to distribute the negative 1/2 here, and I'm going to multiply. So y minus 2 equals negative 1x/2 minus 4/2. Remember, you multiply the top times the inside and keep the denominator. The fraction here cannot reduce, so you keep it the same. But you guys can reduce this one, 4 divided by 2. So I will have y minus 2 equals negative 1/2 x. You can put the x next to the fraction, minus 2. And the last step you guys need is get y by itself. Add 2, and I'm getting y by itself because we want the slope intercept form. So this is gone right here. Y equals, so notice there's the y by itself, negative 1/2x, and negative 2 plus 2, 0. So can you put plus 0? Yeah, but we don't need it. When you add or subtract 0, you just don't have to write it down. So the line that we are looking for that is parallel to this line up here is y equals negative 1/2 x. Now you guys pay attention. The slope for this line is negative 1/2. The slope for this line is negative 1/2. Same slope. This one has a y-intercept of 6, and this one has a y-intercept of 0. So they have different y-intercept, but the slope is the same, or they have the same slope. All right, so let's go ahead and jump to the second example. Let me just put a box here so we know that's the answer. So the next one is the given line is not in slope intercept form, it's in standard form. So I'm going to use the little shortcut I showed you guys to find the slope of this line. Remember that we want to use the same slope because parallel lines have equal slope. So opposite of A divided by B. So my A is the one with the x, B is the one with the y, and I do have an imaginary one here, minus 1, negative 1, and C is 5, but we don't need C to find the slope. We just need A and B. Opposite of A divided by B. So let's see, opposite of A is positive, so I'm going to turn that negative. M equals negative 3 over, let's see here, b is -1. Do not change the sign of b. So we have -1. And -3 divided by -1. Let me just zoom in here so I have more space. That's going to be a +3. All right, so my slope, the line that we're looking for, must have the same slope, 3. Now, let's go ahead and start with the point slope form. Y minus y1. And this is to help you guys set up your equation, remember? But you guys need to change this form into the slope intercept form. So let's see here, y1, x1. So x1 is here, y1 is here. So that's the point right here that is given to us. I'm going to substitute the numbers, and remember to change the x1 and the y1, the signs. So I'm going to have y plus 3 equals my slope. So there's the slope that I found, 3, right here. And we have x minus 4. Okay, let's go ahead and distribute the 3. I want to get y by itself. That's the slope in its form. Y plus 3 is 3x minus 12. There's no fraction, so that's good. So the only next step is get y by itself. Subtract 3 from both sides, and we get y, this is gone, equals 3x minus 15. So we have the answer. Now you guys can compare. Let me just show you. Remember the line that is given up here, we got a slope of 3. This one also has a slope of 3, parallel lines. This line is not going to have the same y-intercept because if they're parallel, they cannot touch, so they cannot be the same line. The only thing that can be the same is the slope. So we got ourselves a parallel line. So this will conclude my video here. I'm going to have to do a second part. So make sure that you guys check that out, and make sure you guys also practice, and I'll see you guys later.